Hey guys, Adam here. We talked a little bit about how you add correlation and that can adjust your player exposures, especially when it comes to stacking and things like that. But I want to show you another example where a little change that you can make when terms of like boosting players or trying to add some extra correlation between players, in this case in a secondary stack, can really adjust overall exposures in a big way. And so with that, let's dig into this. So this is a lineup again. I ran 150 lineups week one. We're 8 days out. Things are going to be changing. I haven't adjusted any projections, done anything. In this case, I didn't even add the stacking rules. It's just straight out of the box. I see Michael Pittman's at 42%. And we'll use Pittman as the example. If I press the magnifying glass, it can show me, who all is in my Michael Pittman lineups, who all is there. And I can see Michael Pittman is playing the Texans. And I'm like, oh, I want to build some sort of secondary stack, or I want to build some correlation between Pittman and probably Brandon Cooks. You could probably do Damian Pierce, who's their running back, but Brandon Cooks is probably a good person to potentially have a secondary stack. Now, I don't want all my Pittman lineups to have Brandon Cooks. In fact, I don't want as much Pittman as I currently have anyways. I would adjust that later. But just for the sake of this example, I have, oh yeah, so if I go back here, I have 0 Brandon Cooks in my Pittman lineups, right? I got 0. I kind of want more than 0. If I'm going to run 63 Pittman lineups, it would be nice to have a little bit of Brandon Cooks. And right now, he's only in 2 lineups that total, and he's in none of my Pittman lineups. So that feels like, I want to add some sort of secondary stack. Well, Fantasy Cruncher allows you to do that, which is really cool. And basically what I'll do is I'll create a group. I'll call this Pittman Cooks. And what I'm going to do here is, this is a really cool feature. They added it in the last probably 2 years, I think. A really cool thing. I can add this key for Pittman that says if Michael Pittman is used, then add, in this case, it would say if Michael Pittman's used, then you must use Brandon Cooks. We don't want to actually do that. We don't want 100% correlation. But what you can do is give them a boost. So you can say in the lineups where Pittman is used, increase Brandon Cooks' projection by a certain percentage. You can also decrease it if you wanted to have inverse correlation. And so I'm going to up this by 20%. And this button's really important. This is saying only apply the boost. Don't, again, force Michael Pittman and Brandon Cooks to be joined at the hip. And so we're in business, right? So let's rerun this crunch. And my goal with this 20% boost is to have more lineups that have Pittman. I want to have all my lineups that have Pittman. I want to have more Cooks, right? At the beginning, I had 0 in my last crunch. And this crunch, I want to have maybe my goal is 30 to 50%. So I have some sort of secondary correlation if I'm going to be running that much Michael Pittman. And as the crunch finishes here, you'll see if I go to Michael Pittman, hey, like this is pretty cool. I added this one simple rule, right? It says when Michael Pittman's used, boost Brandon Cooks' projection by 20%. So that's great. Look at this. Now I've got 50% of my lineups that have Pittman in them also have Brandon Cooks. That's, it's kind of what you want, right? But you have to understand there's ramifications to this. Like, now I've got 25%. I know this is he's already in a lot of lineups, but Brandon Cooks' exposure is now 25% because of his joint to Pittman. That's to be expected. He had like 2 lineups before, you wanted more lineups. So that makes a little bit of sense. What's even more interesting though, this is really where you have to understand how a program operates, is you'll see in the previous crunch that Michael Pittman was 42%. And in this crunch, he ends up at 50%. Oh, now wait a second. All I did was say in my Michael Pittman lineups, boost Brandon Cooks' projection by 20%. Why would that increase Michael Pittman's exposure? Well, if you're thinking like a program, what's happening behind the scenes is it says, hey, whenever I've got Pittman and Cooks together, I've increased his projection by 20%. It's like 3 points. That's a really big deal, like 3.2 points, a really big deal. And so what ends up happening from a programmatic standpoint is not only do you get more Cooks, which is to be expected, but you actually get more Pittman because this combination of them two together is projected for a lot more. I'll take this to the extreme example and put Brandon Cooks at like 50%. So now where Michael Pittman's used, up Brandon Cooks by 50%. And of course, you would expect like 100% correlation between Pittman and Cooks in that at that point. So every lineup that has Pittman probably has Cooks in it. But you're starting to see something very interesting here, which is almost 100, almost every lineup. And I've got like 4 unique set on this. Even with like this many unique, 4 unique set. These guys, not only are they joined at the hip, right? Where their exposure, they're definitely correlated. They're 100% tied to each other. Every Pittman lineup's going to have Brandon Cooks, and it does. But because you've boosted the overall projection of the two of them combined, we're talking about like 8 points in projection that you've added to Cooks when Pittman is used. You've effectively raised your exposures of both of them because when you put them both together, you get 8 more points, which is significant. This is like eye-opening. You need to really realize and understand what happens when you artificially boost players. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but we need to understand that there are programmatic implications to that. And so this and how you handle that and how you do boosting and stuff like that, that's up to you. This is really how you want to play and work and work on your lineups. But understand that when you start trying to create artificial, that type of correlation, you are subsequently and inadvertently you have the obvious risk of increasing your exposures to both of those players, including the player that you didn't increase the initial projection for, which was Pittman in this case. So I hope that lesson helps understand some of the nuances and potential pitfalls of adding that type of correlation.